Thank you for coming and meeting me today. My mother suggested a nice question might be to ask if you met yourself, if you met an 18-year-old version of yourself, or if you happened upon yourself, what would you say that you've done in your life? Say, hey, you had all these plans. This is what I did.
Well, at 18, I was a junior in college. I graduated from high school very young because it was Depression years in the United States. And the school districts had, when a teacher would retire or get pregnant, the class would be disbanded and sent either forward or backward. And I got moved up all the time. So I graduated from high school at 16. Very immature, smart enough, but not very, I wasn't streetwise, or I didn't really know much.
And what type of plans did you have?
Well, I always planned to go to college because my mother had graduated from the University of Missouri, which was very unusual for women in 1923. So, and my father was a geologist from the University of Oklahoma. And so naturally they expected their only child to be a college graduate.
Yeah, you said your upbringing had something to do with your goals at that time. Do you want to talk about the early years growing up and how that cemented you as a definitely going to college lady?
Well, my mother and father were very affluent in the first few years of their marriage because my father was a land agent. He was buying mineral rights from farmers for drilling oil. And it was an oil boom in Oklahoma. And my mother had been hired down there by the school board because their schools had boomed from so many people moving to this little town. So they were part of a very fun set of young people when they got married. And then suddenly the Depression hit, there was no money, so the oil business just dried up. And it actually stayed dried up for many, many years because there was no money to invest in the drilling or the oil wells. And there was no need because we had Saudi Arabian oil and Iranian oil and Iraqi oil. We didn't need the oil, and it was much cheaper. So they moved to Tulsa in probably 1926. And my mother began teaching school because my father had no job.
What were their names? What were your mother and father's names?
Mother was Gertrude Carmen Weirs, and my father was Sylvan Hunt Andrews. He was born and brought up in Oklahoma. Mother was brought up in Missouri.
Do you know I'm sure you remember your grandfather's name and grandparents' name?
Yeah, Frank Weirs, and they called her Lizzie, probably was Elizabeth. And they were both first cousins of a notorious outlaw called Jesse James.
Oh, yeah. And so these are your grandparents on your father's side?
No, I don't know much about them. His mother had been an immigrant from Scotland to Arkansas, and her father had been in the Civil War.
But who's his and her in the story?
This is my father's family,
Okay.
the Andrews. And he had to leave because the Union Army had burned down the cotton gin that he owned.
This one's over here.
And so he and his brothers all left Tennessee where they were living and moved, and he moved to Arkansas. Some of them moved to other states, but they all left. And so he settled in Arkansas and was apparently a teacher and a somewhat farmer. And my father had 5 siblings. And the last 3 of them went to college. The oldest two, the oldest three did not, but they were successful small businessmen. So my father was very bright. He had a memory that was unbelievable. He could, I think it was a photographic memory.
Yeah.
And he and my mother.
Hold on. Speaking of photographs, as for this interview, I was trying to get some snapshots of some different parts of your life. So we talked about like meeting that 18-year-old person, gave her some advice, and then how about like getting through trauma in your life? What was there, like some traumatic event, and then how did you get through that, and how did that change you as a person?
I have very little traumatic events in my life. I was fortunate to have loving parents. I was rather spoiled, being an only child, but I went to college at Oklahoma State, and I joined a sorority and lived in the sorority house. So the girls began to shape me up. They discouraged my self-centeredness and helped me become a more, I think, sensitive, maybe empathetic.
What did they say that made you think that they were?
Well, they were
good sources.
They weren't nice. They were brutal. I mean, they were sisters and we loved each other, but you know, they just didn't put up with the kind of stuff. I was really selfish. I went into my first room and I wanted this closet and I wanted this dresser and I wanted this. Well, you can't do that when you're a 16-year-old freshman.
So what were some of the ways that they brought you to their way of thinking?
You don't know girls very well. Girls are very good at shaping people up.
I shaped you up.
They shaped me up. They helped me. I appreciated all that because obviously I really wasn't ready for real society. I had been in clubs in high school.
What was real society like? What was dating like?
Well, that was fun. We had a happy hour in our sorority house every night, or a dance hour. So we'd turn on the record player and we'd play dance music and dance for 30 minutes. And then we'd go out to go walk over to the nearby snack bar and get a Coke and then walk home. That was our usual every night happening. And it was fun. You met lots of people. What were
some of the strategies you and your friends employed to meet the men? How could you
they all came. They came to our dance hour.
And
we're all there. We're all there, and they ask us to dance.
You're just standing at the wall, and they say, "Hey, would you like to dance?" And you have a dance.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens after? Do they ask for your phone number, or do they try to call you, or ask for your address, or write you a letter?
No, we were on the phone all the time. All the time.
And do they send you letters?
No letters.
No letters, just phone.
It was a big society of fraternities and sororities, and we had plenty of opportunities to meet boys.
Was there ever a party that you remember that was so cool where everybody dressed up?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of those. The fraternities put those on mostly.
Were they themed in some way?
No, but they were prom. We would wear long dresses and really dress up. Mm-hmm. And they had lots of extra men who would tag dance. It was tag dancing. You'd dance one dance with one person, and then others would cut in. Mm-hmm. They'd tap your partner on the shoulder and say, "May I cut in?" And then you dance with another guy.
And in this way, isn't it kind of the man's deciding who's going to dance with who next?
Of course, what do you think?
So, yeah, because nowadays it's the ladies who choose who's going to dance with who. We don't got much to do with it, you know. We try, but I can't just go and tap on a guy's shoulder and say, "Hey, let me dance with that girl," you know. It's not happening.
Well, we women have come a long way. Not as much as we'd like, but we've come a long way.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that a little bit? Were you involved in the feminism movement?
Not really, but I have been very sympathetic to it.
Hmm. And how have you, as what watching things unfold with women and women's rights throughout your lifetime, how have what do you comment on it? Is it what the heck, like what's going on, or I'm happy with the progress, or what's going on?
Well, fortunately, because of my education, I was able, first of all, I went back to ASU after moving out here from New York. You see, you left out that part of my life.
Yeah,
It's a big part of my
we
life.
didn't. Well, let's revisit it now. What would you like to revisit?
Well, I would like to say that when I was 20, I graduated from the University of Oklahoma, and I had met a guy that was at West Point. And so I wanted to go back there and date him, and thought it was a romance. And so without much money, about $500 that I saved from working about 6 months at home after I graduated, I went up to New York without a job, without a place to live. And that takes a lot of self-confidence and a lot of moxie. And so that's really the beginning. Everything I've done has been reliant on those things.
Well, tell us one little story about it. Like, how about finding your first apartment? Do you remember how that went
Well,
down?
I had a friend in New York. I went with another girl, but there were always 3 or 4 of us, and we were up in the area, so we had somebody to stay with when we first went. And there was an apartment in her building, and it was like 1 room, cost $60 a month. I got a job that paid me $100 a month as an insurance adjuster in a big insurance company in Rockefeller Plaza in New York City.
So you had $40 left over?
$40. But I was a very attractive, blonde, young woman, and I had lots of dates for dinner. And so I made it. I survived. But that's what I'm saying. It requires curiosity, perseverance, and self-confidence.
But where is the boy from West Point in this story?
I went up every weekend. There was a whole regime of there's buses that go right to West Point and back. And I went to a certain place, I think in the Bronx maybe, to get the bus every Friday. And I stayed maybe 2 nights. And we had a big dance on Saturday night. Maybe I went Saturday morning and stayed 1 night in a hotel on the grounds of the West Point. Beautiful up there, beautiful. And we dated for 13 weeks straight. I went up there. And then I just really decided it wasn't for me. So I quit going. Just broke up with that guy. And
There's not more to that? Just stopped? Just got bored?
Oh, there were a lot of little reasons, but none of them very significant.
Yeah.
That's at 20, you're not really set to make a
Yeah.
lifetime commitment.
You moved on.
Exactly, I moved on. So anyway, this experience in New York, and then I met a New Yorker who came back from World War II. And that was an exciting time to be in New York City because I got to see I went to Times Square when it was VJ Day and VE Day with all the crowds cheering and yelling. And then this guy came into our office who was a fighter pilot in World War II. And we got married and we moved back to Oklahoma for him to go to the school on the GI Bill.
Mm-hmm.
It was a wonderful thing. I think your Uncle John went there.
They still do it. My cousin, or my friend, a good friend, Myron.
Well, is it good as it was then? Because, millions of veterans went back to the war. They changed lives. changed lives. I had two friends here in Arizona that had been sons of copper miners, one in New Mexico and one in Colorado.
Mhm.
And both of these guys went back to college on the GI Bill. They never had to go into the mines like their father had.
Uh-huh.
It was a life-changing event. We created a middle class. Plus, it got people moving around the country. Before, people stayed in their little town all the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And then they quit doing that now. They move, just like us. I lived in Oklahoma, then I moved to New York. Now I moved to Arizona.
Do you think that your migrations have helped you become a more rounded person, or?
That's why I love Arizona, Orson, because people here have experienced so much difference in their lives. People didn't live here. This is a second place or a third place.
Mhm.
And they've all experienced different things, more interesting. That's why I like the people. I don't care about the desert or the warm winters. I like them, but it's the people who are so interesting.
Yeah.
That made my life more interesting, just having all of them.
Would you like to tell us about any of them?
Well, Memorial Day, instead of thinking about all the veterans, I thought about all the friends I've had that have died.
Mhm.
At my advanced age of 97, I have had eight really close friends. People like your grandmother that I knew her, everything about her, and I loved everything about her. I can brim up right now thinking about her. But she's not the only one. I have had 7 others, starting with high school, through college, and then in New York, and then out here. Just wonderful friends, and they're all different and they're all diversified. Most of them have been educated because I tend to enjoy those people more because they just are more interesting to me.
Did they ever hang? Did they ever hang out?
That's not a word we ever use.
did your 7 or your 8 close friends get together at times, or were you mainly friends with them and
No,
spheres?
hardly any of them were. I had a big clique in New York. We lived in an apartment, a beautiful little apartment, in which I left with 3 kids. Had another one when we bought a little house, and but we had this group of friends there. All of them veterans, all of them college graduates, and we had parties every Saturday night in somebody's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And there was drinking and there was games and there was all fun. And the kids were all asleep in the apartments. Some people had monitors. Of course, nothing like they have today.
Mm-hmm.
But they had monitors that they could hear them.
Mm-hmm.
But most didn't. The men would go home about every hour and check on the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Not very safe, not very responsible, but that was a group I loved. I loved that group.
That's cool.
And I really kept up with a lot of them.
What type of games do you guys play?
Oh, I can't remember. I really can't remember. But
like cards?
As
card
the
games?
evening wore on, they got a little more profane, a little more, as we had more to drink. The behavior became more. It was such fun.
Okay, well, we talked about a lot of fun times. What about something like, not so fun, but like making the decision to retire? How did
Well,
you?
there was the middle part of my life. That was easy. The middle part of my life, my husband was a kind, loving, fun person with a huge sense of humor, but he was also an alcoholic. And as my teaching days, my salary got better. I became independent. You don't need a man when you have an income that's sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And so the man has to be more worthy to keep the woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just got to be intolerable. This, I didn't know. My children were grown. This was 32 years in on our marriage. But it was getting harder. He became more unwilling to go places and do things.
Mm-hmm.
He really just was getting more internal.
Uh-huh.
And so finally I divorced him. And so that was the time. Also, our youngest son became, everything about him, he graduated from high school late because he was tardy at school and not doing his work. And he refused to go to college and went up to be a ski bum. He was real worried. And so then my mother moved out here. This is the trauma you wanted me to tell about. My mother moved out here from Oklahoma. And I bought her a house near me. She didn't like the house. She was lonesome. She couldn't find her way around town, even though it's easy in Phoenix. And she began to get obsessive and paranoid about me. I couldn't do anything right. And it just became very difficult. Plus my son getting into trouble, real trouble, stealing things from Circle K and getting drunk and killing a car. Having a car accident.
Totaled
a car. And it was right over there in Papago Park, near where we live. And
yeah, you pointed out when we go by.
That and my husband's alcoholism. That was traumatic. So when I got the divorce, I would say it took 2 years for me to be back to my normal. I was really depressed and I was just anxious.
Mm-hmm.
But I survived it. And eventually I met a new gentleman and living where I did. And I jokingly say, but it was true, that I relentlessly pursued him till I got him. And we were married. And first I had played golf with him. It's your mother and another lady friend. And we were all different. And he decided I was the best one. So I didn't feel like he had 3 chances. He had 3 to choose from. But he was really lonesome. He moved out here. He had no friends. And he was really energetic person. He started fixing things in my house and just helping me. And anyway, I can sum that up easily. I had 20 years of a wonderful marriage. Part of the reason it was good was because I had learned an important lesson. You can't change anybody. People are what they're going to be when they're 22 years old. And if they're a certain way, when you meet them or know them, they're not going to change. All that is really very difficult. So I didn't try to change the second. I had spent 32 years working on the first one and never accomplished it.
Yeah.
So I didn't try to change him.
How'd that strategy work for you?
It worked beautifully. We never argued. We never had any fights. All I had to do was mention what I would like to have done in the house, and we'd be off to Home Depot to buy the stuff because he loved fixing things and, making things work. And so it was a wonderful 20 years. We did RVing. We had second homes. We even went across the country in an RV. We were gone 11 weeks, I think, one year. It was marvelous. I loved RVing. And that was bonding thing right there. You can't RV unless you're getting along really well.
Yeah, certainly.
You are together 24 hours in those RVs. So we did. We just had a great time.
That's sweet. And so where is he now?
Well, he died in 2004. And I stayed in my house 2 years and was so lonesome, and I just got tired of eating alone and being alone. Even though I had a lot of friends in town, it wasn't enough. So I moved to this retirement place. I've been there 15 years.
15 years. Wow.
I know, I'm the longest resident in the place.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's really wonderful, and I'm happy there.
15 years, that's incredible. And yeah, with my grandma, I always wondered whether or not she would have been more happy, like having people to hang out with and talk to.
Yeah.
Like, so.
Well, she made things. She went to the country club. She went to
She was so
senior
motivated.
center. She went up to the community college to a weight room. To exercise. She kept busy every minute of her life. She really didn't like to be home. She was never home.
Yeah. But for me, I think I would like to rather do you like how you do it, there's people who have like interests and stuff nearby, and you can hang out and do things together.
Oh, we had so much activity
and
there.
walk over to each other and hang out. You got ladies who can, and you have a Spanish class and everything, things that you can continue
Spanish
to do
class.
and learn.
We have a lot of exercise. We have a swimming pool, heated, and I go in there often.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great place to live. I've been on trips all over the state.
What type of international adventures have you had?
Well, that's pretty interesting. Here again is curiosity and self-confidence. I went to China in 1976.
Whoa, why?
It was
It's
primitive.
like fully communist, right?
Oh, it's fully communist. The people all wear blue suits, blue baggy pants and tops,
Everybody's wearing the same stuff?
all the same. And the maidens wore pigtails. The regular women just wore long hair about shoulder length. And everybody dressed in those blue suits.
Wow.
And there were trucks on the road being pulled by horses, and there were wagons being pulled by people. There was no private car, not one. And actually, this the Cultural War had gone on previous, but we didn't know about it. Nobody knew about it. The United States knew nothing about it. There was no reporters or anything in China. Nobody knew anything about it. So they had this terrific cultural war where kids were going all around burning books and really assaulting
This
people.
is Chinese kids burning American books?
No,
Oh.
burning books. For instance, in Beijing, we went to the library of the university.
Uh-huh.
No books. We thought no books because that they were poor. It wasn't that reason. They had pulled them off the shelves and burned them in the square.
Wow.
But see, we didn't know that for years later,
Mm-hmm.
probably 30, 40 years later,
Yeah.
when things got out about what had actually gone on. And
Did this like Tiananmen Square, the guy put in
oh,
the
we lived in
flower
a hotel.
tank
We were in a
and stuff?
hotel right across from Tiananmen.
Mhm.
It's beautiful. Huge. 4 or 5 city block square. There was a museum there where they had those soldiers that they had dug up about 3 feet high.
Uh-huh.
And about 3 feet. And they had dug them up out of the ground. And there were probably hundreds of them in this museum.
Yeah, all lined up.
But there were more. There were more than that. We saw a lot of their treasures. We saw a lot of their. I had a beautiful slideshow, and I wished I'd kept it all. I didn't keep all of it. I kept the. I had some of it translated to a CD, but not enough.
Yeah.
Sometimes you make dumb decisions. I could have afforded to do more, and I just didn't.
Yeah. You feel like you would have traveled more if you, I don't know, could do it again?
No. I did go to Italy, been to Britain, And this trip was long because they didn't get permission to go to China till very late. So they had planned another trip. We went to Japan and Bali and Singapore. And this was all, and then we had 2 weeks in China.
Whoa.
So it was a long trip.
That was with your second husband?
No, he didn't go. This was my first
The
husband.
first husband.
When I got
70.
divorced was 77, 78,
Oh, okay.
or maybe 78, 79. And he, I didn't, so it was 2 years later after I got back from China.
All right. Well, Ann, let's wrap it up. Anything else you want to close it off with? Some closing remarks for somebody like Audrey or Audrey's kids, or some people, just to, hey, this is Ann, and put it your
Well,
final
I'm just
message.
happy that I have, my claim to fame is 8 grandchildren who have graduated from college. 8 out of 9. And the other one is just lovely, but he really wasn't interested in college.
Hey, that's cool.
So anyway, I have a wonderful family. I have 3 surviving children. One died a year ago up in Colorado. And the other 3 are doing well. They're all retirement age now. And, but I'm lucky. I've got 9 grandchildren, 2 great grandchildren. And I'm lucky.
Thank you for doing an interview with me.
You're welcome. You're welcome.